Hey, what is going on, guys, and welcome back. We're picking up where we left off from the previous video where we're still working with strings in part 3, section 2. We're about halfway through this section. The previous video we finished this exercise where we had to print a word inside of this frame using asterisks, and this was our solution. So following that exercise is a little bit more readings and a couple of exercises. I think we might be able to get to this one in this video, but if not, we'll do that exercise in the next video. But there's still a couple more exercises to do in here, and we'll be done with this section. We'll move on to section 3, and hopefully we can finish this chapter before the end of the week. But yeah, let's continue. So where are we? We are here, about to learn about substrings and slices, which basically is going to talk about how to, if you have a string, how to print one portion of that string, and basically take, for example, this image, right? You have this string exemplary, and we want to just print EMPLA or just to EMPL. So this section is going to teach us how to do that using substrings in Python. All right, substrings and slices. A substring of a string is a sequence of characters that forms a part of the string. For example, the string example contains the substring exam, amp, and plea, among others, or play. In Python programming, the process of selecting substrings is usually called slicing. This isn't. This is just a note. Slicing isn't unique to Python. Plenty of other programming languages also have a slicing method, and it's usually a built-in method. You don't have to define it yourself. I mean, you can create your own functions that do this, but JavaScript has this, TypeScript has this, Java, if I remember correctly, has a slicing method too for strings, but I haven't touched Java in a while, so I don't really remember. But yeah, it's not unique to just Python. This is across all programming languages have this kind of behavior, and they even have built-in methods that do this for you by just providing a starting index and an ending index of that string that you want to slice. And it's also almost exclusively called string slicing. And across all the languages that I've ever worked with that covers this topic, it's called string slicing. So that's just something to keep in mind of when you do transition out of Python and onto other languages. You will definitely become very familiar with string slicing, or just come across it again. And a substring is often referred to as a slice of the string. The two terms can often be used interchangeably. This is also very true. If you know the beginning and end indexes of the slice you wish to extract, you can do so with the notation opening square brackets, that's your starting index, followed by a colon, followed by the ending index, followed by a closing square bracket. This means the slice begins at the index A and ends at the last character before index B. So this method is non-inclusive of the last index. That is, including the first but excluding the last. You can think of the indexes as separated lines drawn on the left side of the index character as illustrated in the image below. So here we have a string called myString, which stores this string exemplary. And then we want to print the substring. So we say myString.substring. We start from index 2 and we end at index 6. And it's going to print EMPL. So if we look at here, this is the string exemplary put in this little grid, and each letter is mapped to an index. So the first letter is mapped to index 0, the second letter to index 1, and so on. So if we want to start at index 2, our substring, if we wanted to start at index 2, it will start here at E, and if we wanted to end at index 6, it's not going to include that letter. It's going to include everything up to that letter. So we'll print index 2, index 3, index 4, and index 5, printing EMPL, or EMPL, or however you pronounce this. Let's have a closer look at some sliced strings. Here we have an input string called presumptuous, and we print input string from index 0 to index 3, so this should print 0, 1, 2. It's going to print pre, right? It's not going to it's not gonna also print the S. It's everything up to the S, so it'll be PRE. And here we have print presumptuous, start from index 4, go up to index 10. So it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're gonna start at U. So it's gonna be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and it's not gonna include the 10th index. It's gonna come all the way up to O. It's gonna be umpty or umptio. And then this one, if the beginning index is left out, it defaults to 0. So when we do this, it's the same thing as doing this. So when we just do the separator plus the ending index, Python is going to infer as us saying print everything from 0 from the beginning to this ending index. Same thing if you do it from the other way out. So if you put the starting index followed by the separator and then no ending index, Python is going to infer as you wanting to print start from index 4 and print all the way to the end of that string. So this first line is going to print pre, the second one is going to print umptio, this third one is going to print pre again, and then this last one is going to print umptuous. And if we go to the Python playground, I think it might be a little bit easier to see Python playground might be a little bit easier to see. Let's wait for this to load. There we go. I'm expecting that pop-up to show up here. Oh, okay, so we can just run this. So we have an input string here called presumptuous, which stores the string presumptuous. Then we print from 0 to 3. So it's going to print pre, as we see here. Index 4 to index 10 is going to print umptio. So it's going to be this. It's not going to print that last index that we want. It's going to print everything up to it. So it's going to leave out this U. And then if we do it this way, we print from 0 to up to index 3. And if we do it this way, we print from index 4 to the end of the string. So these are some methods to keep in mind when it comes to string slices. Okay, here they have a little side note on half-open intervals. In Python string processing, the interval A to B is half open, which in this case means that the character at the beginning index is included, or index A is included in the interval, but the character at the end index B is left out. Why is that? There is no profound reason for this feature. Rather, it is a convention inherited from other programming languages. And this is what I was talking about earlier. String slicing isn't unique to Python. It's not unique to I think any programming language. They all have this feature. So you'll see it everywhere. Any other programming language you will ever encounter, they'll have something similar to this. It might not be written as this, as A to B like this. They might use commas instead as a separator, but you still have a starting index and an ending index. But yeah, as well as getting substrings or getting specific indexes by using the square brackets tied to the end of the string, and things of that nature. Half-open intervals may feel unintuitive, but in practice, they do have some advantages. For example, you can easily calculate the length of a slice with B minus A. On the other hand, you must always remember that the character at the end index B will not be included in the slice. So yeah, we can always know what this, again, these are just some of the little things. If you want to know how long a slice is, you can just do ending slice minus the starting slice. So for example here, if you want to know how long this string will be, we can just do 10 minus 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 10 minus 4. Same thing here, 3 minus 0 is 3, so we know that our substring will be 3 characters long. Same thing here. And here, now in this instance, we'll need to know exactly how long this string is, right? So we can know what that total length number is minus 4. Okay, so we have our first. Okay, and one thing I should mention: if none of this made sense, let me know. I'll be happy to make another video on this. But sometimes I feel like the material here in the readings do feel a little bit rushed, and so again, as I've mentioned in a few other videos, there are videos that the university has that talk about these topics in a little bit more in depth, and you can find videos on this all across YouTube. You can find articles about this all over YouTube. And again, feel free to ask in the comments and I'll be more than happy to answer. Here we have our first exercise called Substrings, Part 1, and we're instructed to please write a program which asks the user to type in a string. The program then prints out all the substrings which begin with the first character from the shortest to the longest, and have a look at the example below. So here we have a first prompt the user to type in a string, the input test, and then we print T, TE, TES, and then test. First, we're going to have a variable called input string, and we're going to store the user provided string. Please type in a string. Then we're going to have another variable called iterator, which is going to be what we're going to use to iterate our string. Then we're going to have another variable called string length, which is going to store the length of our input string. And then we're going to have a loop here, and we're going to say while the iterator is less than or equal to the length of the string, so string length, we want to print the input string at that index, which will be the iterator. And then we're going to increment iterator by 1. And now we're going to see what this prints. So let's run this. If you type in test, we get an error. If we start this at 1, still get another error. String index out of range. Hold on a second. It's TEST. Okay. So it's printing each letter individually, which is what we do not want. It should do T, then TE, then TES, and then test. So what we learned up here is we can create a substring, right? So what we want to do is start from the beginning and then go to the end. So this is going to print the first letter, then it's going to start over. It's going to print, so this is going to become 1, so it's going to print from 0 to 1. Then it's going to go over and over until this is equal to or less than the length of the string. So let's try this again. So we get T, TE, TES, and then test. So this is fine, but we don't want this empty space here because there shouldn't be one. It should prompt you for the input and then print out the substrings up until you get the full string printed out again. So we're just going to increment this up by 1. Then we're going to run, type test, and there we go. So if we test this, it works. I'm not going to show you the model solution because I in my head I think I can visualize how theirs is going to look. So I'm just going to give you some pointers here, and this is something you're going to see in programming a lot. Now here I spelled out iterator, but in a lot of examples that you might see online, this is sometimes abbreviated to I, the letter I, which can mean one of two things. So far we've learned the term iterator and we've learned the term index. Now in most programming languages, in most examples that you'll see online, in other videos and tutorial, when you see I used in a loop like this, it typically means index, right? They're not calling it an iterator, they're calling it the index. So when you might even see it sometimes written out as index, but some programming languages have this as a keyword, so it might not work. Sometimes it might be written like this, as IDX for a shorthand of index. So you might see this, you might see iterator, you might see IDX, but for the sake of clarity, I'm just going to leave it as iterator. So I'm just going to Control Z a bunch of times, and I'm going to leave that as is, iterator. Another thing that we can do here, because since this value isn't going to change, and it's only used once, what we can do is just plug this in directly into our loop condition. And we can get rid of that to make this just a little bit cleaner. And as you all know, you can do iterator plus equals 1, make it a little bit even shorter. So again, if we test this, we should be okay. So yeah, you can definitely shorten this up a little bit, make it even more concise. But just for the sake of clarity and because I'm sharing my solutions with other people, again, since we're also talking about string indexing, it'll be, I think, better to use the term index over iterator here. So this is our solution. If we test this again, it should pass. And then we can take a look at the model solution. I haven't signed in. Let me sign in. All right, I'm signed in. So this is the model solution, part 3, exercise 17, substrings part 1. So they have their variable here called string, which stores that user inputted string. Then they have a variable called length, which starts at 1. And then they do while length is less than or equal to the length of the string. Print the string starting from 0 to length, and then increment length by 1, which is exactly what we did. In fact, what you can do, because we just learned this, if you remember, if you don't specify 0 or the starting index, then Python is going to assume that we want to start from the beginning to the end. So what you can even do here is just write that. Again, if we run this, it should do the exact same thing. And if we test this, it should also pass. So you can do it even this way if you want to look like you know a little bit more than normal, but this is just for clarity's sake, we'll leave it like that. All right, here we have another exercise called Substrings Part 2. So this is a build on of this exercise. And we're instructed to please write a program which asks the user to type in a string. The program then prints out all the substrings which end with the last character from the shortest to the longest. Have a look at the example below. Okay, so same thing as the previous exercise. We prompt the user to type in a string. They type in test, and then we print T, then we print ST, then EST, and then test. So we're starting from the end of the string to the start. So we're printing T first. This will be the last T. Then we're doing ST, so it'll be these last 2 letters, and then EST, which will be these 3 letters, and then test, which will be the full word. So we know we're going to need a variable to store that input. And then same thing, we're going to have a variable to track our index. And then we're going to have another variable to store the string length. Again, you don't need to do this. In fact, we won't even do this for this solution, but just to make things a little bit clearer for ourselves. So here we're going to say while index is less than or equal to the length of our input string. Same thing that we did over here. We want to print the input string from the end. So this will be index towards the end. So let's and we should increment index here by 1. So we should say index is equal to index plus 1. So let's see what happens here. So we're seeing that it's printing EST, then ST, and then T, but it's not printing it the other way. Now, why is that? So there's this neat trick in Python, and I'm surprised that they didn't talk about this in this reading that we just did, about how you can start indexing from the rear of the string. So how would you do that? So here, from this Geeks for Geeks article, I'll put this in the link video. I'll put this in the link below. You learn about using negative numbers to index strings, right? So remember, we talked about this in the previous video. If you were to say, for example, do input string -1, right? Python is going to interpret that as you wanting to print the last index, right? The whatever is here in the last position of the string. Because, again, if you remember, this was like the same thing as doing length of input string -1, because the length of the input string is always because it starts from 1 to the last number. While indexing starts from 0 to whatever the highest number is. So this will be 0, 1, 2, 3, but the length of the string is 4 characters. So that's why we do this -1. So when you do this, it's the same thing as doing this, right? So this will print the last T, for example. If we just do this, it's going to print the last T 4 times. Okay. So that means that we can do index, right? We'll do the same thing. So now, so you can see it's printing test backwards, right? And then what do we do? we can do that. So now we're saying start from the rear of the string and go to the start. Or am I hallucinating here for a second? I'm sorry, because it's flipped, so we don't specify the 0. So it will still be, it will still work, but we don't specify the 0. So there we go. So because we're starting it from the other way. This was when I was thinking about this exercise before I started recording this video. It was one of those things I was trying to, in my head, in my brain, I'm trying to figure out how I can best explain to you guys why this works. So Python has this thing with strings called negative indexing and when you're doing string slices. So when you do -1, this is telling Python, hey, print the last letter of the string. And this is great when we don't know how long the string is, right? So I'll even do this. Let's just, for the sake of practice, let's do it. Because we know how long, we know how long our test string is going to be. We're going to write the word test. We know it's going to be 4 characters long. So what we could do here is just print input string at the last position, second to last, third to last, etc., etc. So when we do test, TSES, and then we can do it one more time since we know how long the string is. So this is what this is doing with the negative indexing. So when we do it with our iterator, right? So when we do index is equal to 1, while index is less than or equal to length of input string, print input string at that index minus the index, pardon me. Oh, we gotta might have to reset this. Stop, reset one more time. Hey, when it does this, give me 1 second. Okay, so I got it to work. I had to refresh the page. So where were we? Right, so as you can see here, it's printing the word backwards. So say for example, we were to do this, right? We don't even have, we're just gonna break out of this. So if we type in test, it's gonna print the last T. If we plug in -2 here, it's gonna print out the S and so on and so forth. In fact, actually, let's do it this way. It might be even a little bit easier. So T, then if we do -2, ST, if we do it -3, and it's glitching again. But as you can see, it's just going to keep printing from the end of the string all the way up to the third to last string. So that's why when we pass in here index, what we're telling Python is, hey, start from the end and then go and then print the string backwards. So print the last T, followed by ST, followed by EST, followed by test. So when we do it this way, we're telling Python, again, start from the end of the string and print to whatever the start of the string is. We don't know how long our string is going to be, so we're not going to specify it. That's why we don't put another number here as our after the separator. Let's reset this again. Hopefully I don't have to. Okay, there we go. And that's why this works. So I might have to make a separate video on this because it's one of those things where I feel like they should have covered this a little bit better in the instructions on negative indexing. They didn't even talk about negative indexing in the course material, but I'm pretty sure in the videos that the lecturers provide, they might talk about this. But that's what this solution is for this one. So let's run our test here and see how we do. So basically what they're doing is basically what we're doing, but it's the same thing as just injecting negative start to the end here. So this is another way you can sort of think about it. So they have a variable here called string, which stores the user input. Then they have another variable called start, which is equal to the length of the string minus 1, right? So remember, doing this is the same thing as doing this. So we're basically telling Python, hey, start at the end. Start at the end and go to the beginning of the string. So they're doing string 0 to the length, and then the increment. Oh, this is the long solution. So print string from the start, which will be the end, right? We're telling the starting point of where to start printing will be the end of the string, and then decrement start by 1. So go backwards. So this I think might be a little bit clearer to even see compared to what our solution here. But yeah, so that's the solution to this exercise. So we hit the 20-minute mark, 25-minute mark actually. So I'm going to leave this reading and this exercise for the next video. Actually, these remaining 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 exercises will be in the next video. Hopefully we can get through those in 20 minutes or so. But if you still are a little bit confused about this exercise and negative indexing in Python, let me know. I'll make a separate instruction video or tutorial or just informational video talking about this a little bit more. And also put these notes in the description so you can go and read this for yourself if you want to learn a little bit more about this. But yeah. Again, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll try my best to explain this. This is one of those things where it kind of takes a second to wrap your brain around, but once you get it, you get it. But again, I think the course didn't do too good of a job on talking about this concept in the great detail that it deserves. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.